everything makes it into the headlines, but we bring you the full story. Join Uchenna Cyril Anyoke, a renowned media personality and former president of the Nigerian Publishers Association, as he unpacks the real issues behind the news, from politics to public policy, economy to human rights. Nothing is off limits. Expert guest, in-depth conversation, local and global perspective. New episode every week on Facebook and YouTube. Watch now on Freedom Square TV. Follow for updates and behind the scenes clips. Beyond the headlines, beyond the news.
And so this morning I'm being joined by a veteran media analyst and what I call a doctoral research fellow, who is actually completing a PhD in Peace, Conflict and Development Studies. He's a public affairs analyst and a keen observer of the Southeast politics. He is Emeka Odom. Emeka, good morning and welcome to Beyond Headlines.
Thank you so much, Chief. I'm glad to be here. I want to say good morning to you and good morning to everyone. It's always a delight to have a conversation with you, sir.
Okay, that conversation we must have. Let's start from the beginning. Like I stated, you are a keen observer, solely of Anambra politics, but that of the Southeast. How would you, in all honesty, describe the experience, both the process and outcome? Give us your overall impression of the just completed Anambra governorship elections.
Okay, yes, talking about the Anambra governorship elections, which happened over the weekend, for me, above everything else, is a delight. It's a delight in the sense that, you see, for one of the most important things to consider in an election, though ordinarily shouldn't have been a problem, but considering the kind of politics that we play in this part of the world, it has somehow become a problem. It has become a very big concern, and that has to do with violence. If you have been following the elections in Anambra before now, particularly the last one that happened in 2021 or thereabout, it was an election that came with much concern, to the extent that I remember very clearly then there were a lot of calls for postponement, and but the INEC chairman then stuck to his gun that the election will eventually hold, and it did hold. A lot of security men were deployed because, understandably so, at that time, many places were considered a bit, unsafe for civilians to come out and cast their votes. And so that election came. In fact, prior to that election, there were apprehension in the land. But now, if you compare that to this particular election, the build up to this election, you probably had little to worry in terms of violence. I don't think, because we were following that election. Yes, a lot of things happened, but obviously not the kind of palpable fear and apprehension that preceded the 2021 general election. So for me, that was a welcome development. And even going into the election proper, you also find out that I will try to monitor the election, apart from the incident of the councillor that was reported to have been shot. Allegedly, exactly. Because we're still waiting to get the details of that. Exactly. And so apart from that case, I don't think there was any other case of much violence. What we probably heard later on was the altercation between the reported altercation between the military and which is a different ballgame entirely. And so for me, that's kind of story that is devoid of violence in this election is a major drive away, and for me it's a success. It's not as if, you see, because like I said, election is purely a civil affair, and in some other clans we see people on election day, people go about their business, market women go about their business, children go about their business. Sometimes in some places children go to school, but yet election goes on and everybody, those who want to cast their vote and return to their houses. But here, for some other reasons, we shut down the entire state. I mean, the economy, the social life, everything, it comes to a halt. And so it was a remarkable thing for me in that respect. But going beyond that, the election itself is yes, on the surface, if you look at the number, if you look at the gap between the incumbent who has just been declared returned and his closest rival, between the Governor Soludo and Nicolas Okachukwu of the APC, you see a huge gap, and so you could say that, I mean, this is an election that slightly below 600,000 came out to cast their vote, and out of that number, the man who is declared the winner, Din Kubek, got about 422,000. So you could look at it to say, yes, these are almost about 80% of the total votes cast. He won. Now, so on that note, you can say it's a reflection of the will of the people. The man is popular. The people they have completely bought into his solution, solution government and every other thing. So these are things you may conclude on the surface, but as analysts and those who follow, numbers and letters as they unfold over time, there are questions to ask. Is that really the will of the people? That is to ask. Now, for once, I am still a bit apprehensive, and I believe that many other people will be, because you have an election where more than 2 million people registered for the election, and eventually about slightly below 600,000 came out to cast their vote, although a better record than what we had in 2021. I mean, these are about 21% of the people actually came to vote. In 2021, they were around 10% or thereabout. But then we could understand, because of the situation at that point in time. So it still goes on to say that why is it that way below, more than half of the number of registered voters still didn't come out to vote? What exactly is going on? Is it a case of people not having confidence in democracy, or is it people not have confidence in the system of the kind of democracy and the system where we do it here, or is it a case of people being indifferent? I mean, we don't really care. Now, if you do a careful analysis of these issues, you will understand where these things are coming from. You see, we live in a country where, particularly in the southeast, over time, people have, developed this mindset of, being a government of their own. I can assure, I don't know exactly, the workings of this environment where we are now, but what I do know is that what goes on in most other properties or most other places of alike, most times you generate your own, the water you use in your house. Most times you pay for, not just that, you pay the bills for the public power supply, you buy the diesel, you buy the generator, you pay for those who take care of these things, and then you pay your own security, you provide your own security. And also, in many cases, the road leading to your house is either you single-handedly paved it, or in conjunction with one or two other neighbors. So, and these are services that government is supposed to provide. So when you find yourself doing these things, and some other time when somebody comes to say, vote for me, I will do this, you look at that person and say, why do I need to bother myself? The time I will use to go and queue up to cast my vote, which eventually may not count, and even if it does count, I'm not sure that you will live up to this your campaign promise. I rather apply this time to do something meaningful. So this thing over time gradually it wins and erodes the confidence that people have in government. That is number one. Then again also, is a big question. Democracy supposedly guarantees one man, one vote. Now, is that how it is here? If you look at this election, and that takes me to the point of this election, does it reflect the will of the people? Prior to Saturday, by the way, where news coming from Anambra, I mean, the social media is awash, and even the conventional media, we now begin to see a new creative way, of voter inducement. We see a package of gala, a can of malt, and some kind of cash, embedded in a package, handed over to. This is it's obvious in the social media and even in the conventional media. So things like this. Now, when a voter, is induced this way or influenced this way, to what extent can we really say that the wherever that voter actually thumbprints reflects exactly the decision of that voter, even though of course that is the voter's thumbprint anyway. Now, that is number one. Number two, we also saw even some vote buying had become almost like part of every election in Nigeria. It's so brazenly displayed, and the question is, why is it so? And the biggest of this whole thing, the biggest anomaly in all of these things for me is the fact that a few days before the election, the governor himself, in one of his campaign grounds, came out publicly to, make what has been described as an inducement, and by every standard, it is an inducement. Those who vote so, this is the amount they will get. Those who do so, this is an amount. So these are things. If you aggregate all of these things together, for me, it goes a long way to discredit the election. And I should have thought that a man like Professor Governor Soludo, who over time has been associated with decency in many other offices he has held in Nigeria, and uprightness, and but again, it goes on to say that what does politics exactly do to men of good conscience? So
I think on that point, many may slightly want to differ. When the Super Eagles are going to play a match and they say, if you win this match, you will get a bonus of X, Y, Z. It's not an inducement, it's an encouragement. Now, maybe because it is an election, they argue that what is said is that because of this voter apathy,
yes,
that they want the people to come out to vote. But people give it different interpretations. Perhaps pure in his mind is people don't come out. So if XYZ are going to have the highest number of vote cast from this place, the highest turnout, we're going to encourage them. Okay? And it's covered that for those who did it 4 years ago, it was just in campaign that we wanted to compensate them.
Yes.
So I don't think the money came before the election. It's saying if at the end of it all, we find out. I'll draw this example from when Soludo was governor and someone was Senate President, Nwabara or something. There's something he did which they called bribe for Nwabara. And for Soludo, they say it was African hospitality. Almost the same amount of money they gave to they spent on something. A person just said that one was corruption and the other was African hospitality.
Chief,
yes,
you have a point there, quite frankly. And let me just say this for me as a person.
Yeah.
I didn't believe personally that Soludo was, engaging in vote buying. However, it's a thin line. It's a very thin line, because it's the same argument that can be advanced if on election day, like in those days where you do accreditation first till about 12 and you now go into voting proper. So assuming people in a place, in a center where there are a large number of people, maybe the materials arrived late. The materials arrived at like around 11, and the law says that the gap between accreditation and the voting should be 3 hours, and so materials arrived at around 11 and people are accredited and some don't want to go home and they stay for the next 3 hours. You find out that voting will now start around 4 p.m. and if you look at the number of people who came out here since morning under the scorching sun, you feel the empathy in you. And so please, let's go and look for refreshment or water for these people who have been waiting since morning. Now you go somewhere to go and bring those things. Now with that good conscience and that good intention, it's very difficult not to separate it from inducement at that point in time, because especially when you have an interest in the election. And so that is why for me maybe it would have been safer and cleaner if the governor has said, look, in this local government area, if the voter turnout in this local government area is this, we are coming to build so and so thing in this village, in which case it no longer matters, because when everybody knows that governor is a major a major key holder in that election, key stakeholder in that election, and if he says you do, and it was on a campaign ground, so if whatever he says there, there's every likelihood that he draws the first advantage by
the fact that he's a governor, it draws an advantage.
Well, of course it does.